Welcome, I'm Luke from Water Rangers, and today I'll be walking you through our education test kit. So I'll be talking about how to take your students out on a successful water testing excursion, and I'll be walking you through some of the different parameters in your test kit. If you need more information on how to interpret results, you can find that in the field guide that comes in your test kit. So we designed this test kit with educators and for educators. This test kit is designed to be the only resource you need to get your students started water testing. And we had classes, schools, and outdoor learning centers in mind when we were creating this. There's only so much information we could include in our field guide, so that's why we have links to additional resources on our website. When you're planning your excursion, make sure you find a place that has easy access to water, and you want to make sure you keep in mind issues of safety with your students. So make sure you go and scout out your area before you take your students there. When planning your excursion with your students, you can either set up a lesson the day before to go through all the components of the kit and their uses, or you can explain them on the day. We find that giving a lesson the day before allows for more time to use the tools and be hands-on. So when you get to your location, you want to make sure to set it up for success with your students. What we recommend is getting a table and laying out all the components of your kit for easy access for all of the students. We recommend splitting up your students into groups of 3 or 5 so that you can easily distribute all the materials. In our test kit, you'll find 3 groups of our most popular items: a conductivity meter, a thermometer, and small containers of test strips. You'll also find a couple of clipboards and notepads for students to write down the results on easily. In the front pocket, you'll find a guide with all the information in this video and much more. We recommend that you read it before taking anyone else water testing. We also have a plastic goodie bag. You'll find badges and stickers to award your students inside of there. In the top pocket, you'll find postcards for the kids to write their favorite part of the day and share something they've learned. So after your students have set up all their equipment and they're ready to start testing, you'll want to make sure you talk about weather. So weather can have a really big impact on a lot of your different testing parameters. You can see it's really sunny out today. It's been sunny for a few days, so that will have different effects that you can find out more about in your field guide. Once your students have written down the weather, the next step is to take the air temperature. To measure the air temperature, students will have to place the thermometer in a shaded spot, like in the branch of a tree. They can also hold it up with their hand for a couple of minutes. In either case, the thermometer should be at least 1.5 meters from the ground, because the ground could be warmer or cooler than the air around it. The next step is to take a water sample. We include reacher sticks so that it's easier and safer for your students to take samples. With these, you'll want to institute a below-the-shoulders policy to avoid accidents. Before taking a sample, rinse the cup 3 times to make sure you get rid of any residues from previous tests or from your hands. Then, take a sample 15 centimeters or deeper below the surface. Once you have your samples, it's time to measure water temperature and conductivity. Conductivity is the measure of water's ability to conduct electricity. It's impacted by dissolved minerals in the water. To turn on your conductivity meter, press the top button once. Then place your conductivity meter in your water sample. On top, you'll see the conductivity in microsiemens per centimeter, and underneath you'll see the temperature in degrees Celsius. Once your values stabilize, take the reading. Most freshwater bodies will have a conductivity between 100 and about 1500 microsiemens, but some will have naturally lower or higher conductivity. So the next thing we'll use are these test strips. These test strips are the same kind that are used to test pool and aquarium water. When prompted, some students will say they're familiar with these because they've used them with family or friends before. We've given you a full bottle of test strips as well as 3 small containers with 10 strips in each. When the small containers run out, you can refill them from the larger bottle. Instruct your students to dry their hands before taking a test strip out. Water in the container will ruin the strips. Dip your test strip for 2 seconds in the water sample. For students to read the values, they can turn around the container and line up the test strip vertically. Here you want to read one parameter at a time by slowly moving the strip on the color scale until you see a color that matches. We all see colors differently, so encourage your students to read the test strips in their groups. If they see different results, they can take the average of what they see. The first thing the test strips will tell you about is chlorine. You usually won't find chlorine in water bodies unless you're close to a water treatment plant or there's a pollution event. The second parameter on the test strips is pH. pH is a measure of how acidic or how basic a liquid is. It ranges from a scale of 0 to 14. 0 is very acidic, 14 is very basic, and 7 is neutral. And most water bodies will have a pH between 6 and 8. When explaining pH to younger kids, you can relate it to foods and items they know. Lemons are very acidic, and soap or detergent is very basic. The next pad on the test strip will measure alkalinity. I like to describe alkalinity as a bit of a superhero parameter because it acts as a shield or water protector. Alkalinity helps protect from changes in pH in the water. It means that it helps create a more stable environment for aquatic life like fish and insects and plants. The last parameter on the test strip is hardness. Hardness is a measure of different minerals in the water. Groundwater will often have more minerals because it's surrounded by soil and therefore more likely to have sediment in it. Some of your students might have heard of hardness before. Ask them if any of them get their water from an underground source like a well at home. Some might say yes, and some might know that they need to filter it with a water softener. The last test in your kit is for dissolved oxygen. We don't recommend this test to children under 9 because it involves manipulating some glass. For this test, modeling the procedure for your students is very important. You'll want to do this test quickly, ideally in 20 seconds or less. The first thing you want to do is take a glass ampule out of the container. Notice the white tip, it's a weak point in the glass. Next, you'll have your special sample cup. Notice the ridges at the bottom. We'll have to take a new sample because our old one has been mixing with the oxygen in the air and it will lead to an incorrect value. Just like before, I rinse my sample cup 3 times before I take my sample, at 15 centimeters or deeper. Insert the tip of your ampule in one of the ridges and press the ampule sideways against the wall of the cup to break the tip. Right away, your ampule fills with water. You'll want to flip the ampule back and forth twice. You can then start your 2-minute timer. You can put a student in charge of keeping time. In the meantime, slowly empty out your sample cup, making sure that the broken glass tip stays at the bottom. At this point, you can tell your class about why dissolved oxygen is so important and what can impact it. Animals need to breathe in the oxygen to survive, just like us. Like with the test strips, take your readings by placing your ampule at the beginning of the scale and moving it up slowly. You'll want to ask someone what they see and take the average if needed. Once that's done, put your ampule in your garbage can to be disposed of later. We include a 20-meter measuring reel in the Education Test Kit. You can use the reel to calculate flow rate using your field guide, or you can use it to measure shoreline. You can see your guide for a lesson plan on how to measure flow rate. If your students are all testing in the same location, you can take an average of all of their samples and then upload that data. When you're cleaning up everything at the end of your testing excursion, it's important to remember to leave as much as you can the way that you found it. Part of protecting water health and water monitoring is keeping shorelines clean as well. Once you're packing up your kit, you can find a little packing sheet in the side pocket that goes through how to pack everything so your kit will fit snugly. The key to a successful water testing excursion is how well your students can apply the knowledge and experience that they got to real-world issues in social studies related to climate change or human rights. Be sure to follow up your testing excursion with a series of questions to keep them thinking about water monitoring. You can find some good examples of questions in our field guide, which tie into science, math, and social studies in elementary school. We would love to see what kinds of data you and your students are gathering. If you want to share your data, you can do so at our open data platform at app.waterrangers.ca. You can create a free group there with your class or with your school and share results over a period of time. We recommend that you, the teacher, sets up this group and uploads results yourself. We'd love to see where your testing excursions take you, so feel free to share photos and stories with us. Happy testing!